So, I always talk about how we get scooped or whatever, and that it happened to me even when it came to Mandalorian season 3 because I've been waiting till the end of the season to finally, like, write about and talk about the baptismal imagery, and our blog drops it before I'm even able to.
Voyage Comics scooped you? What a joke.
Yeah, I know. And it's not that other people can't have the same good idea as me, I just want credit for having it first.
Yeah. Especially if it's your employer.
Well, I know, I'm very needy, though, when it comes to attention, so
Get your own ideas, Voyage Comics.
Welcome to the Voyage Podcast, a show that traverses the oceans of myth and legend through the lens of Catholic theology and philosophy. Come aboard as we set sail in pursuit of the heroic life and Christian virtue, with your hosts, Mike Schramm and Jacob Platty.
And welcome everybody to this season 3 retrospective recap of Mandalorian episode of the Voyage Podcast. I'm your host, Mike.
And I'm Jacob.
We haven't done that in
Man,
a while,
I feel
have
like,
we?
yeah, we haven't done that in a long time.
No, I just
Like,
assume
wow.
everybody knows us, so.
Still feels forced, so.
Yep. So, we're going to
Anyway.
be, as I said, we kind of teased this, what would it be, 8 weeks ago or so, that we had 2 episodes that really
Yep.
focused on a couple of big themes from just the Mandalorian in general, and we wanted to release them at the start of season 3. Well, we knew that after season 3 was over, even after watching like the first 2 episodes, we're like, there's going to be a lot more to discuss in these, right? I mean, and
Yeah, well, that was the assumption. Turns out that maybe
well,
not. Who knows? I mean, I don't know about you, Mike. I'm not going to be too negative, but a little disappointed with this season compared to the
okay.
first 2 anyway. I'll say that I like the first 2 better than season 3.
Well, and one of the things I will say is that even if, your enjoyment wasn't as high as maybe it was going through season 2 or even just the Mandalorian scenes in, I should say, Din Djarin scenes in Book of Boba Fett, which I thought in terms of like what was that, 3 or 4 episodes, that was a really
Yeah, it
good
was like
arc.
3 episodes. Yeah, it
And
was. Yeah.
but there are still, just kind of
Almost like it
thinking
should have
back.
happened in the Mandalorian series, right?
Well, they
How
have
do
to
you
have the
how's
things go
that for a
back and
thought?
forth. Yeah. They always have to
Uh-huh.
have to things interspersed because nothing can ever be a standalone thing. It always has to be leading you to the next thing. Haven't you learned anything from the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Yeah, if that was if that's what was happening, it would be the equivalent of, like, you're watching whatever, the next Iron Man flick, and then all of a sudden, like, 1/4 of the way through it, the rest of the movie is just an episode about, like, I don't know, Doctor Strange or something like that, and
Yeah,
then Iron Man comes back in at the end.
that's
It's
madness.
like, well, that's a weird that would be that would be
That's
madness, wouldn't
yeah.
it? That would be a very weird Iron Man movie, though. That's
So
what that would be.
before you fall down that negative spiral too far,
I know, right?
I am going to
I'm already
force you to.
spiraling.
So, and well, one of the things I want to say is that even if the enjoyment level wasn't as high, there are still some pretty good themes that I think are worth talking about. But let's first go through what were some of your highlights? I mean, what would you say was like your favorite, overarching thing or one particular moment just from season 3?
Yeah, so, here's the thing. I think that it was just inconsistent, and so there's plenty of good stuff. There's plenty of stuff that I liked in season 3. Highlights, the most obvious highlight for me is the Mythosaur.
Okay. Yeah, which
It's
we a
just
little
cool that they
teaser
have a
at the
giant
end.
kaiju creature. Yeah, it just kind of, they flash, he pops up in the beginning, or wait, was that no, yeah, that's beginning of season 3, right?
In beginning and at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, and then at the end, they show him again too. Um, so that's just a simple little, delight for me, right? Because it's cool to see, like, a kaiju creature like that, um, at play in the Star Wars universe, and he's got a cool kind of, tether to the Mandalorian mythos and all that.
And
Um
it's a loose end that demands to be tied up or addressed. And so we know that there's going to be something's going to circle back to that, whether it's, Din Djarin's story or Bo-Katan's story or whatever the case is.
I I'm fine with the fact that we didn't see him very much,
Mhm.
but how cool would it be? I mean, hey, for all of you Star Wars writers working at Disney, go ahead. You can have this one for
Friends of the
free.
show.
You can have this one for free. I want a scene where there's a big Imperial cruiser coming into the planet Mandalore, and all of a sudden, the mythosaur just kind of like crashes out of the ocean and just like grabs it in its jaws and just brings it in the ocean like
Brings it
Jaws.
into the water.
That would be
Well, and they
sick.
kind of I don't know if it would maybe be too derivative because they already did that with, like, the pterodactyl scene.
Well, they had something similar to it, but I want to see the mythosaur actually fight the Empire.
Gotta fight the bad guy.
Yeah, I want to
Yeah.
see it fight
Gotta
the
fight
bad
the
guy.
the real bad guy, not just the other monster.
hmm
So,
hmm hmm
um, the, you know
I have other nice things to say too, but I figure that'll be like more like part of the conversation. So a
well
simple highlight. I like the mythosaur.
Well, and I like that you brought it up too because that was one of the big indicators for me that like because a lot of people have talked about could this be the series finale of Mandalorian? Like, is the story arc of Din Djarin done? And then they just need to, they'll have some sort of spinoff, and
hmm
you get that sense when you see like if you can think of that final scene of like the picturesque, like they get that house on the with the little shutters
Yeah,
and
they have
even
that.
the
Yep,
the Looney
absolutely.
Tunes circle wipe, which I was like, that was kinda jarring. That actually surprised me that they did that, where it, like,
It
circled in
was,
on
yeah, it was cute though. I liked it.
no, but it gives you a sense of finality, which is why I think a lot of people are saying, is Mandalorian done? But it's just paved the way for, and one of the things that I want us to talk about are potential spin-offs. So what are the potential spin-offs gonna be?
well, I mean, I think we already know they're gonna do an Ahsoka
Yeah.
Tano show,
Yep.
right?
That's coming
Um,
up soon, actually, I think.
I do think that I haven't been paying much attention to the internet chatter about the show, and I finished it up probably with everyone else last night. And I hadn't thought about a whole lot about how much if they're going to do a season 4 or not. They do wrap it up pretty neatly at the end.
Yeah.
And with the promise of further adventures of, Din Grogu and
Yeah. Well, that's the other
D-
big moment.
yeah, Din Djarin going off
He
and just kind of
continues
like
he
going on
continues to grow
adventures, you know.
goo up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was wondering when that joke was gonna happen. If you didn't do it,
Yeah.
I was going to. So you beat me to it.
Yeah,
Looks
thanks
like
for
I got
giving me
scooped
that
by
one.
you, Mike. But
I thought what did you think of the heroic death of Paz Vizsla
oh, I
too?
liked it.
And that was the penultimate episode.
Yeah,
'Cause he
no,
he
it
kind of
was
becomes a little bit of a he's sort of an antagonist that's carried over. He and Din Djarin are kind of like, rivals or sort of thing. And that goes back to
right.
the Book of Boba Fett scene.
It does,
And then he's
absolutely.
still he's a little antagonistic, especially early in the season. He definitely gets won over because Din Djarin and Bo-Katan go and save his son when he's captured.
Right. You get the impression that he is kind of like the alpha male, like the
Mhm.
quarterback of the Mandalorians, like the kind of like
Oh,
most
so if
popular
he's the
jock.
jock, then who's the goth in the Mandalorians? That's what I wanna know.
I mean, well, I don't
Sorry, I didn't mean to
let's
put you
think
on the
about
spot.
that.
I was
No, we're
just teasing.
gonna that's hilarious.
Probably the armorer, to be
I was
honest,
about
but
to I mean,
anyway.
my head went the armorer, but she's more
Yeah.
like the cool nerdy chick.
Oh,
Maybe it's more, Bo-Katan. Maybe
who's the,
Bo-Katan.
uh oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on the trope, the pixie, manic pixie dream
Yeah,
girl.
Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
Is
Maybe
that in
that's the
the
armor.
Mandalorians?
What if the armor
She's
is
too
the
serious
Manic
for that.
Pixie? Yeah, no, maybe not, maybe not.
Carl Weathers is the manic pixie dream girl.
That's
Okay,
right.
we're getting too far into the tropes. We gotta, go back to the
Anyway, so
circle back to the
anyway,
themes.
but all right. So in contrast to Paz, you have Din, and he's kind of like a little bit of an outsider, like a little bit.
Mm.
He just doesn't quite have the same like clout with the company, and doesn't seem to be doing himself any favors. Well, maybe because he obviously gets like excommunicated at the beginning of the season, right?
Well, and
Um,
imagine being the mysterious one among the Mandalorians. Like, they're already the mysterious ones, and then you're the mysterious one in that group.
wow,
That's the next level.
that is some next level stuff right
I
there.
gotta I gotta get my head out of high school right now. I keep thinking of, like, the high school, like yeah. So, anyway,
Uh,
no, keep
maybe
going
maybe
with your
Din's the
point.
manic pixie dream girl.
Ooh, yeah. He's won over all of our hearts, our
That's
toxic
true. That's
masculine
true.
hearts.
Um, Anyway, where were we?
You were talking
Before
about
we
Paz
start?
Vizsla,
Oh yeah,
and you're
yeah, his
saying his
sacrifice
heroic
and all
death.
that stuff.
His
Yeah,
heroic death,
so
yeah.
yeah, so you have the two, and there is that competition going on, and as such, Paz is he's kind of a jerk, right? Like he's antagonistic. It's nice that we see. But here's the thing: you never see him. You see him be kind of like alpha. You see him be kind of pushy, but you never see
Mm.
him be like genuinely dishonorable, right? In
Well,
any of
that's
his
the thing is he
depictions.
was the one he gets you get the impression that he's the one who's, like, slavishly devoted to the creed, whereas, Din Djarin was the one who's willing to kinda, like, um, break it on occasion when we go back to the whole removing of the helmet and all that stuff. So that's
True,
the other thing
true.
too. But like you said, it's an honorable thing, and
It
he
is an
does the
honorable
honorable
thing.
thing at
Yeah,
the end. Like,
he
his
doesn't
death
feel
very
like a
much had the,
bad
like,
guy. He just feels
samurai
like
honorable, like, sacrifice.
yeah, there's this, is he a better because he rescues Din what in season 1? Like isn't he one of the I think that's all the way
Well, it's
back in
been a
season
while.
1 when like, there's that scene where all the Mandalorians, it's the first time you see like a bunch of Mandalorians show up and it's in
I
that
think you're
like
thinking of 2.
is that
In that
season 2?
yeah, I think you're thinking of 2.
Well, there's basically a little battle that takes place where a whole bunch of Mandalorians show up into Navarro, and it's still like a trading outpost. And they have to basically defend Din as he's
Mm.
escaping from the bounty hunters. That's season 1, I think.
Okay. No,
Maybe
I'll
it's
take
season 2.
honestly, I'm kind
Um,
of it's hard for me to remember 2 now. So,
no,
yeah,
it's
I'll
all
just
right.
take it's
He
fine. It's
he
either 1
he
or 2,
goes and
so
he rescues Grogu, right? And then
yeah.
all the Mandalorians show up to protect him because all the bounty hunters suddenly every bounty hunter in the galaxy is after Din.
Mm.
And that's when the Mandalorians show up. And it's kind of like the first time, if I'm not mistaken, it's kind of the first time we see a group of Mandalorians, right? And up until that
Yeah.
moment, it had just been Din. But I'm pretty sure he's one of the dudes that like saves him, right? So
Yeah.
there's this chip on Din's shoulder where like, he's always in the shadow of,
Mhm.
you know, Paz, but so it's nice to see him have that kind of like epic last stand kind of thing. I appreciated
Yeah,
that.
for sure. No, that
Um
was I put that as a highlight, definitely. So
mhm. No, it was really good. It was really good.
did you care for the assassin droid showing up again? Like, it's like, if you wanna talk about death and resurrection tropes, that's the assassin droid. Going back to our Superman Death
Yeah,
of
right.
Superman episode,
I know.
you just can't it just keeps coming back, and then what is the last thing? It comes back as, like, the sheriff of the little hamlet town.
It's kind of nice. I guess it's kind of nice that I mean, I did think it was fun that Grogu pilots him. And at
Yeah.
first I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel about that, but it kind of won me over. It was
I
cute
kinda
how he
rolled
kept
my
on
eyes at
doing
first,
the
but
I did too, but honestly,
it was the very childish yes, no, like, it was very much for the kids, which,
it
again, is fun.
was, but honestly, I don't know. Maybe like I've said in earlier episodes about this, mainly just because I have a baby right now. Of course, you do
You've
too,
softened in your
but
old age, yeah.
yeah, I know I'm getting soft.
I'm just cynical now.
Yeah, I guess not. That's what happens
I'm
with the
like,
5th kid, I guess, huh? You know,
I'm on my
or
6th,
6,
but
yeah,
sure,
whatever,
yeah.
yeah.
I was gonna yeah. It's like,
Whatever.
"Oh, it's
I can't keep
old
count
hat
of all your
now."
kids, Mike. Come on. Um,
That
but
makes 2 of us.
right. Nah, but let's see here. I was really optimistic about where they went with it in the beginning of season 3 with him having to go get like baptized, get like rebaptized
Well, that was a
basically.
cool kinda bookend, right? Because you
It
had the recitation of the creed in the first scene and then, like, the final scene or close to the final scene.
they do. They do. In our earlier conversation, we were worried, or I was worried anyway, like, well, where are they going to go with this? Are they going to treat the creed like it's, you know, unessential?
Just some guidelines,
That's
yeah.
just and is this going to be a story about how like people need to evolve past their traditions and be like more open minded and things like that? Or is it going to double down on, treat it like an interesting aberration that he has to do for the sake of his child, right?
Mhm.
But not disrespect it. like say, hey, well, you did this, you crossed this line. We understand why you did it. It made for a really interesting um uh what's the word I'm looking for? Like
Like conflict, or is
tension. Yeah,
that
conflict. Yeah, that's it.
or
Yeah,
story?
made for
Yeah.
interesting conflict and development. But we're not, you're not gonna get off that easy. Like you have to go fix that infraction. You have to go
Yeah, and I
make
thought
amends for
they
that.
treated that pretty respectfully.
And they did. Yeah, they absolutely did. So I was
And it
pleasantly surprised
and
the
carried
first
it all the way
episode or two.
through. I think it was significant ending it on the Creed, just like they began it on the Creed.
It is nice. I'm a little torn. I here's the thing. So I don't like how season 3 became basically like the Bo Katan show.
Okay.
And kind of at best, because frankly, they're also like having these like big episode long digressions into, Coruscant and things like that. Um,
Mm.
which is fine, but this season felt very um like they were kind of all over the map. Felt a little inconsistent. I like the streamlined story of seasons 1 and 2. And season 3 feels like they're trying to do a whole lot of world building, which, hey, I'm not opposed to world building, but, pace it. Edit it throughout your shows instead of, just disappearing from Din and Grogu for,
Mm.
huge chunks of time, right? And then so much of the different arcs, the different kind of episodes that occur, um, I just it was
I think
okay. The
it was
midsection really sagged. I think that was great in the beginning, it was great at the ends, but, like, the middle, we'll say, like, 5 episodes or 4 episodes.
I think they tried
Meh.
to keep some of those themes that, yeah, like you said, came off the most strong in the early and the end of the season. They tried to maintain those at various points throughout the middle too. Even, like you said, it wasn't as entertaining or wasn't as effective because it wasn't the characters that you tune into the Mandalorian for. But I think they at least tried to, maintain the consistency of the big themes, which I kind of pulled off as like either baptism slash adoption. Right, adoption was a huge theme throughout the entire season. Redemption, which you've already kind of alluded to and touched on,
Yeah,
because it's not
redemption
just
for
Din
sure.
Djarin.
I obviously
Bo-Katan
obviously,
has a redemption arc. The Armorer has a sort of redemption arc too.
you think the armor has a redemption arc because
I
she
think,
finds her place back at the retaking of
yeah,
everyone
like
comes back to Mandalore kinda thing?
the refounding of Mandalore and the refiring of the forges, I thought was a huge scene as sort of
Let's
like
get to
the
that, like, that's probably
establishing.
its own we could have an entire conversation, but before we get into that, um, you know, I do think there was a lot of family. There
Yeah,
was I think family was a big theme for this season in general. I mean, even you know
surprise, yeah.
well, and I guess that's true of the show. I guess it's not surprising to say that, but, they certainly were doing a lot of talking. Like, I mean, maybe more so. I mean, I know that the other seasons are always about like Din and Grogu and things like that, and so I know that's family, and I suppose it's true when you put that on the larger like Mandalorian culture as well, and like the loss of home and things like that. Um, but I
Well, it's
guess
just there's so much adoption, right? And
where
even
my
if you
head
go
is
back to the
going,
original Skywalker saga, there's so much adoption that's taking place, and there was a lot in this season too. I didn't
well,
mean to derail
certainly
you, but
no, it's good.
yeah,
Like
like
certainly
found family,
him actually
but
adopting Grogu at the end, right? I'm tracking on that. Other than
they
that,
adopt
though,
the 3, bird creatures that they when they
oh, they do.
the
Yeah, I
sounds
suppose they
like
do.
they
Yeah,
adopted
yeah.
them. Then you also have the, like, almost like the mockery of it, or I called it, Moff's, or what is it?
Oh,
Moff's
like the little mini
mimicry?
me's, mini
Well, yeah,
mops.
so he's doing the cloning, right? He's doing the
Yeah.
cloning, which the cloning is always supposed to be sort of like seen, and this is happening a lot in Star Wars too, but it's seen a lot as a, like, yeah, like a distortion of the natural, biological child,
If
right?
you contrast
And
that if you contrast that with the fact so the big climactic fight between Moff and Bo-Katan and Din Djarin, there's a whole lot of, like, "As a team, we can defeat you," right? Like,
yeah,
and that's the only way they can, right? And I was glad, actually, I really liked that. I really, really liked how, like, no one of the 3, because Grogu's there too, no one of the
Mhm.
three is able to actually like take him on. But when they combine their powers, they
Yeah.
are able to like defeat him ultimately, right? And they all bring something unique to that fight, and they all add to it, and it works really well. If you contrast that with the extreme kind of narcissism of Moff Gideon. Like he has a
Yeah.
statement he makes where it's like, I have perfected um the, trooper by putting myself in it. It's like if you can't,
Mm.
don't trust anyone else to get the
It's
job done but yourself.
yeah.
How's that phrase
You wanna
go?
get it
If
yeah,
you
it's like,
want something
"Want a
done,
job
got
done
to do it
right, do it
yourself.
yourself."
Yeah.
Yeah,
That he
exactly.
takes that to the ultimate extreme, and he says, "I've tried robots. I've tried all these other different
To
imperial
to
types."
be fair, God has that same mentality though. It's, "I myself will provide the sacrifice."
God's
Now
the
there
only one
again,
allowed to have that
that's the
mentality,
well,
Mike.
that's the very much the putting yourself in God's place though, right? That's
It
very
is.
much the Luciferian kind of attitude of, "I'm
Yeah,
gonna put myself in the place of God. If you want it done right, do it yourself."
right.
Which, yeah, that's what God
No,
did.
that's
I mean,
it's what he does, and so he's gonna rely only on himself. He's the ultimate narcissist, and you basically have this confrontation between family and the individual, the hyper individual, right, at the end of this show. Um,
see, Din and Bo always had that will they or won't they, and they kind of end up being mom and dad at the end a little
a
bit.
little bit, a little bit.
Yeah.
Bo
It's
I
very
know
Ross and
people
Rachel, so
people love
you've heard it here
Bo-Katan.
first.
Yeah, Ross and Rachel.
Din
They're
and
the
Din and
Ross
Bo
and
are the
Rachel
Ross
of the
and
Star
Rachel of
Wars,
the
but were they on a break, Mike? Were they on a break?
I mean, there was a big absence, right, in between when she left, right, when she was exiled or whatever,
That's
so
true. That's true, man. She left him. But I know people love Bo-Katan, at least that's the impression I get. And maybe it's just because she represents like the progressive branch of the Mandalorian. So, like the the helmetless, I don't need your stupid religion branch of the Mandalorians,
yeah.
which but she does have a nice conversion, right? She does have a nice
Mhm.
come to Mandalore moment. Um, but I don't know.
Well, then it was almost like then her in the armor almost had a will they or won't they too, so it's like it always you kinda had that look that they exchange where you're like, "Oh, geez, here we go."
Yeah, well, only
It'd be
only
hard to kiss
because
through the helmets, so
only because we have to be afraid of storytellers
yeah,
wanting to tell that story. Otherwise, I don't think it was just fine. It's just people just have these relationships that are full of respect, and they don't have to go further than that, right? It's just
yeah.
that's what people want to
It
do.
was
But
so there was like a Sam and Frodo moment between those 2.
that's right.
Gosh,
Better
I'm
way
all
to
over the
put it.
place today, aren't I? Yeah.
That's all right.
So
Uh,
no, so what's funny is, yeah, you have this it's like he creates his own army, right? And remember that moment where the one, fighter was looking when he escapes and he's like, "Oh, that's Beskar armor, or that's Beskar metal," because he's copying the uniform, he's copying himself, Moff
mhm.
Gideon, and he's copying the material. So in every way, he's trying to resemble the Mandalorian, and like you said, in his own image. He's recreating it in his own image because
And
that's the only right way to do it.
you also get this he has this little speech at the end there where he's like, you know, this is what's great about diversity. Basically, this is basically what he says. He's like, this is what's great about diversity is I can take everyone's cool stuff and keep what's good and throw out what's bad, right? Like,
Oh,
and
so he's
and
a cafeteria Catholic is what you it's
I don't know
the
if I wasn't
cafeteria
even gonna
Catholic
go
version
there,
of
but
the
that's funny. You can go ahead and say that. But like it's just this idea. It's kind of colonial, right?
Mhm.
It's kind of, and I'm typically not the guy to. I think whatever, we won't go into it. But what I will say is that he represents the dark side of, no pun intended, of kind of globalism or colonialism,
Mhm.
whatever language you want to use there, where you're just going and you don't respect the cultures, you're just mining the cultures for resources kind of thing.
It's not a cooperation with, like, the true Christian missionary spirit, it's the domination of
Right. If we're
the
getting back to the
opposite
imperial
spirit.
domination motif, we're getting back to
Mm.
the technology accruement
But now, like
motif,
you were
right?
saying, it's not just the domination of people groups or of places. It's the domination of ideas, not the cooperation with ideas,
Sure,
right? That's
sure.
kind of his thing is, yeah, I'm gonna subjugate all of these other, technological things or resources, or ideas related to resources, and pull them into myself. And
And
that was kind of Moff Gideon's big thing at the end.
and if it wasn't for, I mean, because here's the thing, like, and this is a theme of this entire show, right? I I'm not opposed to Rem alright, if you take the basic idea of taking other people's cultures and keeping what's good and removing what's bad, that's what I do. That's kinda what this show is about. It's like, where do we see Christ, and how do we discard what's antichrist, right? So in
Mhm.
that basic sense, then that's fine. But, he's a kinda twisted version of that, where it's like I'm just creating the ultimate weapon so that I can ultimately, discard you, destroy you, and take your place, right? Whereas I do think that the Christian evangelism is much more of redeeming the world instead of conquering the
Mhm.
world, right? So, so bad Moff
Well,
Gideon.
and it yeah, and it implies that the things, had an inherent goodness that is either being celebrated or upheld or uh, you know, what would you say, just
Pillaged.
propagated. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, not pillage, not taken from. I'm saying
Okay.
like you're trying to increase the goodness that's already there. There's the inherent
Oh
goodness
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah. Oh,
if we yeah,
okay, okay, yeah,
you
better.
you were still stuck on the bad guy. Yeah.
That's true.
So
True, true.
no, that's and yeah, we were gonna so I mean the whole Moff Gideon, like, that's the very much the, distortion of or the perversion of some of the good things that we already saw in there. I think we mentioned yeah, we talked about the Creed, the await which I think is cool is that in the first scene, the Creed, you could almost say, awakens this monster that attacks all of them.
Mhm.
And then in the final scene, that's when the mythosaur wakes up, and I know we've already kinda seen it wake up or whatever, or Bo-Katan talks about it, but they showed that clip again in the context of them reciting the creed. And so you have this, like, awakening of this power in the
Yeah.
context of, like I said, the belief or the creed or
Well,
something,
he's
which I thought
almost,
was significant too.
and you could actually roll it like so. It's similar to how there are many kind of mythologies or folk tales in which the spirit of the culture is manifest in this totem like culture, like animal, like not culture, animal, like this, like so. Imagine, whatever pagan religions, or oftentimes this is gonna. I think I'm trying to struggling to find another example of this, but imagine a fictitious story in which the you know native population worships a giant beast, right? And that giant beast is like their god, right? The mythosaur is kind of like that in the context of Mandalore, right? He's almost like
Mhm.
their god, avatar, right? And I am not saying that he is a good representation of God. That's not where I'm going with this point. I'm just really drawing attention to the kind of mythology of the Mandalorians. Is they seem to be, because we don't know. We know about the way. We know about. We're learning more and more about their creed across the show. Little bits and pieces here. Um,
Mhm.
are they truly? Are they theistic? Are because the show doesn't take us that far for the most part, but they do have this mythosaur creature, and the mythosaur creature does kind of remind me of that kind of trope of having like a giant monster creature that the natives like kind of worship kind of thing, or ascribe ultimate power to. And then
Well, and
back in the Old
actually
Testament you get this with like, you know or ancient Near Eastern religions, you get this with like the kind of mythical creatures that constitute like the world, right? Like Leviathan or Tiamat and
Well,
things like that.
speaking to your point too of like, how fleshed out is the theology of or the mythology of the Mandalorians, but that kind of speaks to if you remember a couple of offhanded references they made to they were fighting against the Jedi you kind of remember when they talked about
Yeah,
that? And
basically, yeah.
a lot of times when people, for so much of the conversation of the theology of Star Wars, it was always, the Jedi were kind of like the religious representatives, right?
Yeah,
And
the
the
closest
Force
thing you
was
really
always
see.
the
Yep.
and so what's interesting is, yeah, you have this, like, there was this war between them, but don't they also talk about somebody who kind of like united the two? And so was there always meant to be this sort of unity between the quote unquote religion of what we see as the Jedi or the Force, and then this mythology of the Mandalorians? What could that have looked like? However many thousands of years ago into the past that they are referring to. Do you kind of remember those
Yeah,
scenes?
I know what you're referencing. It's an interesting thought. It could almost be this idea of like you have the Jewish people, and then it opens up to the Gentiles, right? It opens up to the pagan nations, kind of thing. Kind of makes you wonder if there's not some kind of like, you know, opening up to like
Or
a new
even
reality
if
through a messianic figure, kind of thing.
Well, or yeah, but since we're working backwards, you'd almost say, like, was there a sort of like reformation break between the Mandalorians and the Jedi that goes back so far, and that's why they were fighting? So because like I said, there was
Hmm.
one who united them all the way back in the past. I don't know if they talk about some prophecy of like whoever rides the mythosaur next is going to unite gather in the tribes,
Yeah,
like
right.
you
Yeah.
said, a messianic thing. But that would be, like I said, it would have a nice sort of
I
poetic,
want to see Grogu. I want to see Grogu
yeah.
grow a USB tail and then go and
Oh
ride the
gosh.
mythosaur
And
because
and somebody's gotta we haven't gotten to this yet, but somebody's gotta repair the dark saber
oh, okay, well, let's talk about the dark saber.
because that
So
was
the
part of
dark saber gets
Bo-Katan's
crushed.
redemption arc too. That was part of her redemption arc, is
Yep.
getting the dark saber, and so then when that gets destroyed, we gotta move forward with that in some way. So, yeah,
It'll be
Grogu's gonna
serious.
repair the
That'll be alright, so let's talk about Mandalorian culture here, in the context of, like, this conversation, because here's the impression that I have, is that you had, uh the larger Mandalorian culture that is populating the planet Mandalore, and it's become a kind of decadent post-enlightenment culture that doesn't take its foundational religion, its foundational myth seriously anymore, right?
Mhm.
And then you have these outpost communities, these kind of rural moon communities that are still like religious radicals, right? And the Mandalorians that we are introduced to in the very early seasons are representative of the religious radicals, but we don't know that as viewers yet. We don't discover until season 2 that they're actually quote unquote extremists, and that the
Mhm.
larger Mandalorian culture,
Zealots.
yeah, they're just zealots, right? The larger Mandalorian culture, doesn't take that very seriously anymore. They remove their helmets, blah, blah, blah. You guys are weird for still upholding the old ways, kind of thing. But
Mhm.
then in season 3, you have and so, like, the dark saber is part of, like, the hierarchy of, Mandalorian culture, the larger decadent Mandalorian culture, though
Yeah.
it's part of the traditional Mandalorian culture too,
Well,
right? So that
yeah,
seems to
because
be the
that's
political
the thing that
power
unites them.
persisted, right? The totem political power, this dark saber persisted. So whereas the religion faded away, the politics remained, right? You still need the
Mhm.
symbols, You still need the American flag to mean something, even
Hmm.
if, there's not a lot that's still holding us together in a lot of other ways, right? Um, so it will be as a symbol of secular power, the dark saber. It'll be interesting to see if they go anywhere with the removal of that, the breaking of that line, right? The
Yeah.
the breaking of that symbol.
Well, because it had such a status that you almost think it can't be repaired, or it's not gonna be the same even if it is repaired. We're gonna
Yeah,
enter into a
if you're not going to make
second dark
something out
saber
of it,
period.
don't put that in the story. Almost like
Mhm.
a Chekhov's gun type thing. It's too powerful a symbol, and it's too powerful a moment to see it broken for it not to be capitalized on in some way. But then
Yeah.
again, who knows? I feel like this is a show that has not always capitalized on what it's set up for.
Because, yeah,
Famously,
it's always been
Grogu and Din separate at the end of season 2, and then they come back together in a different series, so that by the time season 3 shows back up,
yeah, don't
they're
worry.
they're just yeah, they're just together. They could have here's the thing, my frustrations with season 3, it's not that it doesn't have a lot of good moments, it's just that they've made weird storytelling choices as far as I'm concerned. I think the episodes in Book of Boba Fett should have been just episodes of Mandalorian season 3. And then you could have cut out some of the stuff that dragged Mandalorian season 3 down, because frankly, the 3 episodes in question from Boba Fett are great storytelling episodes. And so, you could have had a season 3 that had those episodes, have him rebaptizing, once him and Grogu back
Mm.
together, have Bo-Katan show up and converts, and then go back and re re get everybody else, re-get the fleet kind of thing. And then you have this kind of great season, right? But they didn't do
Mm.
that. They did other choices instead. They introduced pirates, which was going to be sick, and then they do nothing with them. They just unceremoniously dispatch
Well,
them over the course of like an
and didn't the
episode.
one guy escape too at the end of when they destroyed that huge pirate ship? But then the one guy escaped. He's like, forget this. But then he doesn't ever come back by the end of the season either.
So we'll see. We'll see. I think
Yeah.
that
Well, no, I mean,
it's
is that gonna be
possible,
another spinoff? Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Well, it's just it's a show that has squandered some of its setups in the past. And so maybe it was, they should do something with that moment. We'll see if they do something with that moment. But
Yeah.
that being said, I also I felt like it was a bit cynical, right? For um the uh the forge lady, um
Mhm.
to just be like, "Oh, it's cool. You just walk both worlds." It's like, huh? Eh? Is that what we're doing? Is that what we're doing?
It's no, we talked about this. It's
It's
the Joseph Campbell, master of two worlds. That's what Bo-Katan became.
yeah, maybe you
You
should
had
try
an
to
atonement.
justify that better. Go ahead. Give the whole spiel on why this
The hero's
is
journey? Or no?
just,
I
well,
just
master of two worlds, but I mean, like, she doesn't go on a journey and become master. That, I mean, is that what we're saying? Like, she converts, she's like
she
a Protestant, she's a Protestant Mandalorian, and she converts to
but then
Catholic Mandalorian.
she washes in the living waters of the mines of Mandalore, saving Din
And then
Djarin.
and
So it's
then
like a
she just
twofer.
goes back to, it's like the Pope sending a Protestant, like a Catholic, back to the Protestants to be like, "Hey,
It's a
we're
spy.
not
It's like a
we're
double agent.
yeah, we're not in schism anymore, like, open communion, everyone, right?" I mean, like, that's kind of, I feel like it's a little cheap, that's all I'm saying. Uh,
That's fair.
yeah,
That's fair.
but,
Uh,
unearned. Give me some kind of mythology that earns that. Because just out of nowhere, we've made such a big deal. I mean, and I don't even complain about that. It's nice to have a really easy visual reference that represents like big T tradition, like wearing
mhm.
the helmet, right? Like
Yeah.
creedal faith fidelity, right? It's a nice heuristic. And they put a lot of effort into making that a big deal. And season 3, they're not really referencing. They're kind of still doing it, but they're also kind of not doing it. And it's like, okay. Oh, she walks two worlds. All right. You know, faithful
Ugh,
and faithless, I guess, right? I mean,
yeah.
she's
No, it's
lukewarm. She's going to get spit out, Mike. That's all I'm
so
saying. She needs to get spit
so
out.
so what it sounds like, it's cafeteria Mandalorianism is what you're really upset about. That's what I should have called it before, yeah.
Right. Oh,
Um,
well.
so we do have the epic, I guess, should I warn for spoilers? I mean, it's the epic Moff Gideon death where
We've been
he
spoilery this
basically
whole episode.
is like he's resigned to the flames of the destroyer that crashes into the planet. Now, I did actually put in my outline, I was like, is Moff Gideon actually dead though? I
Yeah,
feel
it's one
like
of those things where it's very like,
did
do
one
we
of those
see him
clones
die?
survive?
Do we
Which is
see
just
him
gonna feel
die?
cheap too, but
Um, I felt
he had
like
kind of like
they
a
they left it
Gollum in
open.
Mount
He could come
Doom. He
back.
had like a Gollum in Mount Doom moment, you know? Well,
No,
and
but
now
that would be more definitive. It's more like when the Joker falls off a cliff into the ocean, and it's
yeah,
like, okay, well, I watched him fall in the ocean, but
but
is he, where's the body? And we don't have a
yeah,
body. We don't have a body, and that means that the door is almost certainly open for him to return.
I mean, yeah, it was completely covered in flames or whatever, but
Well,
it's
so with
just I
Darth
don't know
Vader,
why.
and we all know what
Yeah,
happened to
well,
that guy.
and
So
and I thought, you mentioned the Joker going off into the ocean. What about the Emperor falling down into the whatever,
yeah, into the
this
big pit.
it's
Yeah,
like
no,
everybody thought that was
this
the
is
end.
a IP that has I mean the Joker's not part of it, but we have seen the quote unquote, death of people in
Yeah,
this before. Even in the larger canon they brought back we watched Darth
Darth
Maul
Maul
get
too.
cut in half and fall
Yeah,
down a giant
and
pit
then
and he
there he
came
is in
back.
Clone
So,
Wars or
yeah,
Rebels or something, I can't remember now.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Unless I'm watching a body on a funeral pyre with fireworks overhead,
So you're saying
um,
Qui-Gon's not coming back?
yeah, I don't see it.
Qui-Gon, Darth Vader, they were definitively yeah.
That's the
Which
only way you know they're definitely dead.
okay, so you bringing up that example is actually interesting because he had his funeral pyre, right? But it wasn't in the Jedi way. It was in this sort of, he was
Not a
burned up,
Jedi
right?
though. He's just
Well,
a
no, of course not. But I just mean that it's an interesting visual theme that they had of the whole being burned up.
well,
So maybe that
it was
does make it
interesting.
definitive.
A baptism by fire. Not really
Well, if
though.
that's
More like
gonna
the
if we're
lake
gonna
of fire.
yeah, it's well, and but I think calling it the lake of fire is probably significant from a biblical standpoint too, that it's the kind of like the inverse of it.
Yep. Well, that's
So,
why I did it. See, you picked up on that.
always 6 steps ahead. Uh, so I don't know, did you have any I did want to 'cause, were there any other Christian connections that you could kinda think of? Like, I think the main thing was baptism and adoption, and so we kinda talked about that a lot. The redemption, we mentioned the living waters of Mandalore, and I thought it was so profound that like, wait, that's they wanted to use that language for redemption for
The
like, if you
baptism
break the rules.
motif in season 3 was super heavy. Just
Mhm.
unapologetically baptismal. Um,
Well, even that Din Djarin almost drowns. It's not that he just goes into the water, but he almost drowns.
mhm, absolutely.
And so there it's again, it's very much the dying and rising
And
that baptism is
the
supposed to
water
be.
itself is like holy water. Like when he brings it back to
Yeah.
prove that and she pours it into the thing and it like sparkles. Very
Yeah.
sacramental, very sacramental. Um,
Yeah.
you know what? At the very end of the episode, there's the garden. There's the garden in the cave, which is
Oh, yeah, that's right, when
actually,
they
I
go
mean,
back in.
so you want to talk about some symbolism. You have a dead planet, right? You have a cave. You're thinking underworld stuff, but you have the return of the king, but it's a queen, it's Bo-Katan, right? So you
Yeah.
have the return of the king motif, and then you have the garden sprouting forth from the cave, right? So you have this
Yeah, so very
resurrection
much a
motif.
paradise.
Yep, this
Well, and we
paradisical
already talked about the regathering of the tribes, right? I mean, that's very much messianic from a Jewish
regathering the
perspective of
tribes.
going
Yep.
after the lost tribes of Mandalore now is basically what it was.
Yeah, that's true.
And
Bo-Katan becomes, and even though I don't care for it, if you want to, buy into the idea that there's like this lady that travels between the worlds type thing, is another messianic bona
oh,
fide.
is that the hypostatic union that you're gonna kinda point to?
Whatever. I'm
Yeah, I
just,
know you don't like it. You don't like it, but you just have to, suck
this
it up and embrace.
symbolism happens.
Yeah.
uh, the like obviously they did a lot to make Bo-Katan very messianic. That's why I said the season 3 is kinda like the Bo-Katan show. And that's
That's gonna be the
whatever. If
spinoff.
that's the
The next
story.
spinoff is gonna be The Reign of Bo-Katan,
Mm. It's
calling it.
interesting. Do you think that, because you have the female Forge Master lady, you have a female Queen lady, is
Mhm.
Mandalorian culture matriarchal?
Are they Amazons really, historically?
Well,
Yeah.
because, it's an interesting question because it's an honor culture, it's a warrior honor culture,
Yeah.
um, and you don't really see matriarchal warrior cultures. People are gonna say that Vikings had, like, female warriors and things like that. That is greatly exaggerated, but, it's the closest thing we got, and it's, like, the only I mean, like, I don't know. I guess there was, like, warrior African ladies, right? They made a movie about
Okay.
them,
Yeah.
last year. Pretty rare, though. Pretty rare, though.
Yeah.
I don't think that you would call Viking culture matriarchal, that's for sure. But you know what? It looks like all the leadership in Mandalore is kind of matriarchal. But then again, it also is heavily implied that it's won, like you win it, right? Like you win the dark saber by defeating.
So like a combat,
It's
yeah,
yeah, like
ritual thing. So,
you know,
I mean,
like Wakanda, like they have
so
to,
it's
fight each other
so
to
it's sort
be.
of yeah, it's just kind of arbitrary that it happens to be, the armor is female and Bo-Katan is female or whatever right now, but because I think if you go back to even if you just go to like the Wikipedia page or whatever, it's like it's not like it's always been, oh, the leader is a
They're
woman
just
or
extremely egalitarian.
so yeah. I mean, it's kind of oh, and you see that with even going back to like the original trilogy in Star Wars, there's always seems to be a little bit of that balance,
Yeah,
in terms of
Princess
leadership
Leia,
and
things
stuff.
like that.
Yeah. So,
Mhm, mhm. Fair
um,
enough.
are you interested in like the Andor? Did you ever watch the Andor? I know that one's already come out. I've heard a lot of good things about that.
Heard a lot of
Are
good
you
things about it.
interested in the upcoming Ahsoka series or Bad Batch?
I am
Now that
interested in the Ahsoka one, mainly because she has such a following with the Clone Wars cartoon, and
yeah.
I've always wanted to revisit the Clone Wars and get that, put that notch on my belt, kind of thing. Um, and it might, with her spinoff show coming up, maybe that'll compel me to go back and try to like get that whole cartoon series in. That'll be kind of a
Mm.
commitment. But I'm interested in her character. I liked her character in season 2. It's interesting that she has that relationship with Darth Vader that she has and things like that. So
Oh, like when Anakin was training her and
back when he,
stuff, you
yeah,
mean?
she's his former apprentice. So she's kind of an interesting character. Uh, Andor, I got to get around to watching. I've just heard too many good things about it.
I'm trying to think of who like the writer or the director or something did something else that I was like, "Oh yeah, that's trustworthy or that's well done."
I'm
Was
not
it Lost?
sure.
No, it wasn't Lost. I don't
The
know.
Bad Batch, we'll see. I don't know. I don't know if I can keep up with the sheer volume of different Star Wars properties that they're trying to push out.
Yeah.
I've been able to catch up a little bit. I had not even finished. Like I pointed out in the earlier episodes. I had to go back and like revisit Mandalorian to
Yeah.
actually catch up. So
No, it wasn't one of those things where it's like, "Oh, the day that it came out, I had to like." It was more like, well, I'll give it a shot after I've heard enough good things. And yeah, usually when I commit to some product, some IP for either an entire season or something, it's like, okay, I'll take a break from like Star Wars for a while and then go on to, something else that looks interesting. But
yep, time to gorge on whatever other fantasy world or science
yeah,
fiction reality it is. Gotta move on from the buffet to a different
different buffet.
buffet.
Yeah.
What's up? Is
Move
there
from
is there
the
s- is there anything
from the
interesting
turf to the
coming up?
surf.
Yeah, right. Turf to surf, or surf to turf in this case, because it's all water baptism stuff.
Oh
Um,
yeah, this was the surf.
this was the surf. Where's the turf? I don't know. We'll
Although they
find
had
out.
that bird, so yeah.
They
Yeah,
did
were
have
there any
birds.
land animals in this, series or in this season? Because you know how in the season 1 they had, like, those I
They
don't
had a
know,
big
they were going across the
sandworm.
desert.
They ripped off Dune and had a giant sandworm in season. That was
That was
season.
in 2.
That was 2. Yeah,
Yeah, but
that's what I
then they
meant.
had the, like, on top of land animals where he was riding on those, like, I don't know what you call them, like,
Dewbacks.
dinosaur and things or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever.
So is the next season of is it gonna all be in the well, see, they are in the sky because they fly the ship, so they can't fly on birds in the next one. I mean, they tried to go after the bird, and they all have jetpacks
That would be
anyway, so
sick.
they
Like
all have
Joust,
jetpacks though.
like the old arcade game. Just a bunch of Mandalorians on top of birds.
But there
I'd
again, it'd be
sign me up for
redundant.
that.
Is it
Mm,
just to
s-
save
s-
fuel in their jetpacks?
The jetpacks, they don't last that long, right? Like there's not.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
think
more
we need
specifically
to.
for combat, not for transportation.
I think it's a sustainability issue. I think that it's much more organic just to fly on birds. That's all I'm saying. Someone.
Well, that goes back to your whole Avatar reference where they have to grow a USB port. Grogu has-
They
Which
do. Yeah, they do.
that's the other that's the looking ahead. That's the last looking ahead thing that I actually you kind of because we kind of said like, okay, if this is a series finale, but there's definitely going to be spin-offs, the Reign of Bo-Katan or the Rise of the Armor or something like that. Probably not the
Mm,
Rise of the Armor, but the like, I don't know, the Fall of the Armor, if anything. They could be like a prequel series. But they have to bring, I mean, it's just too marketable to not bring Grogu back. So are we
I
going to
think that
see the continued growth and development and, you know, is he gonna become a full on like wear the wear the Mandalorian well, we already got the armor. Is he gonna get a jetpack?
didn't Mandalorian have a jetpack? He's had a jetpack.
No, Grogu.
Oh, yeah. That'd be cool. Just to see little Grogu flying around.
Well,
I
which we already
honestly,
kinda
I'm
got a little
shocked.
taste
I'm
of.
shocked that I thought for sure before all said and done, so I guess they have to do a fourth season because I still expect to see Grogu in little Mandalorian armor. I
Yeah,
expect a little
well,
helmet.
there has to be a doll that you can buy of it,
Yeah,
basically.
like they have to, if only for the merchandising. So I want to see my little Mandalorian Grogu. So I guess that's why season 4 has
That's
to exist.
yeah. Well, and I mean, you keep getting the sense of like, because they even in the final episode, they talk about how young he still is. Because remember, wasn't the armor who says he can't say the creed,
Mhm.
so he can't like do it yet. He can't like become one, and that's why he adopts him. That's
You
why Din
know,
Djarin officially adopts him.
there's I guess that's where we do see a distinction because there's no infant baptism in Mandalorian
Oh,
culture. There has to be an age of accountability.
you have to
Uh,
say it for yourself. Yeah.
yeah. So there you go.
Oh, there is that disappointing. I
There
actually,
there
I
are a
the
bunch
thought
of
was, it was that line in Mark's where it's like whoever confesses with their lips, will be baptized and saved or something. And I was
uh-huh.
like, oh, yep, there it is. It's
It's
so
true.
yeah, no infant baptism, but I
No
guess
infant
the adoption
baptism.
is just as good.
Sure. It's yep, no doubt. Well, all right. There you go. Mandalorian
Yeah,
season 3.
yeah, I mean, that's the retrospective in terms of like what we're looking ahead to, I guess, in terms of either Mandalorian seasons or Star Wars content. We kind of talked about that. And uh is there any other thing you would want to see developed? I think you've kind of mentioned some stuff. I mean, I mentioned like how are they going to address the destruction of the dark saber? How are they going to address the kind of the new society of Mandalore or whatever? Are they going to address the fallout of the death of Moff Gideon, or was there a death of Moff Gideon? Were they any other like I said, looking forward, unanswered questions? We talked about the
Well, all right,
mythosaur.
if Admiral Thrawn, they name drop Admiral Thrawn, which
Oh yeah,
I think is gonna
yeah.
be in the Ahsoka TV show.
So that was
Um,
probably just like a Easter
he's an
egg kinda
awesome
teaser.
villain. Um, even though I haven't watched the Clone Wars or for that matter the Rebels, Star Wars Rebels, which I think was but he is someone that deserves like he was from the books in the 80s and 90s, right?
Okay.
Admiral Thrawn became one of the best villains in Star Wars, right? And then when Disney bought it, they just retconned all that out. Like he kind of went away, even though he was a fantastic villain, evidently. So
Yeah.
he represented the remnants of the Empire trying to like climb back, right? And so he
Mm.
was doing this whole thing where like he was regrouping the Empire and things like that. And he was like an honorable master strategist. He just like super believed in the Empire.
Yeah.
So he was just a really good villain. And evidently he became the bad guy in I think it's the Star Wars Rebels cartoon, but he
Okay.
hasn't had his he's such a majestic villain. He needs to have like a really, really meaty presentation
Like, be
in
the
live
main
action.
antagonist for a whole season.
Right.
Yeah.
Or an even
Well,
for an entire show,
hopefully
really.
we'll
So
see him cloned, and then we can see him,
well, he's gonna
multiple
they
times.
were name dropping him in this one. He's evidently I
No,
don't
I'm
know
saying
how.
we can see him cloned over and over because that's what they gotta do with every big bad
Oh,
guy,
yeah,
so
yeah, I guess so. Right. Yeah. Well, we'll find out.
Never the good guys, always the bad guys, which I think is telling. But
Isn't it
anyway,
though?
yeah.
Yep.
No, thanks for well, hey, I should first say thank you for doing your homework so quickly, Jacob, because we got to do this turnaround really quick,
That's
right
true.
after season 3 ended.
We are being
So thanks for
punctual.
coming in and having this conversation. Thank you you guys for coming to listen to just some of our thoughts about some of the Christian imagery, some of the big overarching themes, what we liked and didn't like so much about season 3 of The Mandalorian and what we're kind of looking forward to next. And yeah, we look forward to having more of these types of conversations, whether it's about sci-fi, fantasy, myth, sacred, and secular, with you guys soon. So
Yep.
feel free to join us again. Give us a 5-star rating, positive review, like and subscribe to the show.
And don't let anyone else tell you you keep those helmets on, people.
Yeah,
Keep those helmets on.
this is the
Way.
Thanks for listening to Voyage Podcast. The Voyage Podcast is a production of Voyage Comics and Publishing, which seeks to create exceptional entertainment informed by Catholic values that inspire people to live a heroic life. Voyage Comics seeks to advance truth and beauty found in powerful stories. To learn more, visit voyagecomics.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.